The moment I realized I didn't belong in my own family wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no broken glass. Just a sentence dropped across a dinner table like it didn't matter. "You know Victoria will take over the firm one day." My father said, "Elara, well, she'll figure something out." Everyone laughed, soft, polite. The kind of laugh people use when they think something awkward is harmless. Honestly, I remember staring at the butter knife in my hand more than anything else. The metal smelled faintly like lemon soap from the dishwasher. My name is Elara Whitmore. I am 30 years old. If you'd met my family back then, you probably would have liked them. Wealthy, connected. The kind of people who host charity dinners and remember everyone's last name. Victoria, my older sister, fit perfectly into that world. Yale degree. Perfect smile. My parents talked about her like she was a stock that kept going up. Me, I liked computers. Code. Systems. The stuff that makes most people's eyes glaze over. One night, my father leaned back in his chair and said something that sounded casual. "If you insist on that tech nonsense, you'll do it without this family." I packed 2 suitcases the same night. I packed fast. Not dramatic, just practical. 2 suitcases on the bed. Laptop, charger, a couple shirts. Honestly, I left half my clothes behind because I was too stubborn to come back later. My mother stood in the doorway watching. "You're really doing this?" she asked. I said I would. I told her. She crossed her arms. "Your sister is building a future with this family. You could at least try to be part of it." "I am trying," I said, "just not the way you want." My father appeared behind her, still holding a glass of scotch. I swear the room smelled like oak and alcohol. He didn't yell. He never yelled. "If you walk out tonight," he said, "don't expect the Whitmore name to carry you." "That's kind of the point," I said. Silence. The thick kind. My mother finally shook her head. "Victoria represents the future of this family." I zipped the suitcase. "Good," I said. "Then you won't miss me." I carried my bags past them and out the front door. Gravel crunched under my shoes as I reached my car. I didn't look back. Not then. Not for 8 years. Cambridge wasn't glamorous. My first apartment smelled faintly like burnt coffee from the cafe downstairs, and the radiator clanked all night like it had opinions. I worked days at a small tech repair shop. Nights. I studied cybersecurity. My boss, Leo, used to watch me stay late after closing. "You're still here," he asked one night, flipping the sign to closed, just finishing something. He leaned over my laptop, writing code again. "Trying to break a system." Leo laughed. "You're weird." "Elara." "Yeah, I know." A few months later, he walked in carrying a laptop that wasn't from the shop. "Friend of mine runs a medical startup," he said. "Their network keeps getting hit. Thought you might want to look." "What kind of hit patient data leaks?" I stayed up most of the night tracing the breach. Bad authentication. Weak internal permissions. A door nobody realized was open. The next morning, Leo asked, "Did you fix it?" "Yeah," I said. And I wrote them a report explaining how it happened. 2 weeks later, another company called, then another. Security teams started passing my name around quietly. The first large contract paid $200,000. The next paid nearly $400,000. But every agreement came with the same rule. Non-disclosure agreements. Silence clauses. My name stayed off everything. One client told me during a call, "We want your system, not your publicity." That worked for me. I liked being invisible. Years passed like that. Quiet work, quiet success. Meanwhile, my family never called. They probably assumed I'd failed. Then one afternoon my phone buzzed. Margaret Whitmore. My mother. The message from my mother was short, almost businesslike. "Elara, the Whitmore Investment Gala is next month. Your absence would raise questions. You're expected to attend." That was it. No hello. No apology. 8 years of silence reduced to 3 sentences. I stared at the screen. Honestly, I almost deleted it. Leo noticed. "You look like someone just texted you a tax bill." he said. Family, I replied. He raised an eyebrow. The rich ones. Yeah, what do they want? A gala appearance. Leo snorted. So they remember you exist now. Apparently. He leaned back in his chair. You going? I didn't answer right away. My laptop fan hummed loudly on the desk. They don't know what you do now. Do they? He asked. No. And you're just gonna walk back in there like nothing happened? I shrugged. Maybe I want to see if anything changed. Leo shook his head slowly. People like that don't change, he said. Probably not, I replied. But curiosity is a stupid thing. It makes you do things you already know are bad ideas. 2 weeks later, I stood outside a ballroom in Back Bay, staring at the Whitmore family crest above the entrance. The doorman opened the door before I could change my mind. The ballroom looked exactly like the kind of place my family loved. Crystal lights. People pretending to enjoy small talk about money. I swear the air smelled like expensive perfume and champagne. A hostess checked my name. Elara Whitmore, she said, scanning the list. Her smile flickered for a second. Then she handed me a garment bag. Your mother asked that you change before dinner. Of course she did. Inside the bag was a dress that might have been fashionable about 10 years ago. I almost laughed. Honestly, it was such a small move. But I knew exactly what it meant. You're here. Just not important. I changed anyway. When I walked back in, the seating chart told the rest of the story. My table sat near the service doors where waiters carried trays in and out. Plates clinked behind me every few minutes. Victoria's table sat right in the center of the room. Perfect lighting. Perfect audience. I hadn't even taken a sip of water before my mother appeared beside me. Elara, she said softly. Margaret, I replied. Her eyes moved over the dress like she was inspecting it. You came, she said. You asked. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. You should be grateful we allowed you to attend tonight. I let that sit between us. She straightened the cuff of her sleeve. Investors are watching this family carefully. She continued. Appearances matter. Appearances, I repeated. Her smile tightened. You'll understand more when you meet someone tonight, she said. Someone. She nodded toward the center of the room. The Caldwell family. Then she said the part she probably thought was generous. This arrangement could benefit everyone. I watched Victoria laughing at the main table, and suddenly the whole evening made sense. I was halfway through a glass of water when a man pulled out the chair across from me. Mind if I sit? He didn't wait for an answer. Dark suit, perfect posture, the kind of smile people rehearse in mirrors. Ethan Caldwell, he said, offering his hand. Elara Whitmore. Oh, I know. Of course he did. He settled back in the chair like we were old acquaintances instead of two strangers assigned to the same table. My parents speak very highly of your family, he said. That's generous of them. Ethan glanced toward the center of the ballroom where the investors were seated. You've probably noticed our families share a few overlapping interests. Is that what we're calling it tonight? He smiled slightly. Whitmore Capital is preparing for a major expansion, from what I hear. And the Caldwells enjoy strategic timing. That too. A waiter passed behind me carrying plates. The smell of roasted meat drifted through the room. Ethan lowered his voice. Partnerships like this tend to work better when families align. There it was. The real conversation finally arriving. So this dinner is an interview. I said, more like a preview of a merger. In a sense. He studied my expression carefully. My mother believes a marriage between our families would stabilize the relationship long term, he said. My mother believes a lot of things. You don't sound surprised. I'm not. Across the ballroom, I could see my parents watching us. Victoria leaned toward them, whispering something. Ethan followed my gaze. You should know, he said quietly. Most people in this room would consider this a very good opportunity. Most people in this room weren't invited as leverage. That made him pause. Then he chuckled. Fair point. For a moment he just watched me. Then he said, almost thoughtfully, "Honestly, this arrangement would make life easier for everyone involved." I met his eyes, for who I asked. He didn't answer, because we both already knew. Dinner moved on like nothing strange had happened. Investors talking about markets, acquisitions, risk, the usual performance. Then someone at the main table said, "Cyber attacks are the real threat now." Another voice answered, "Last Q1 breach cost our firm nearly $400 million. People leaned in. Numbers like that wake a room up. A man near the center table spoke next. Tall, calm, the kind of voice people automatically listen to. "That's why we switched to the Sentinel architecture." I knew that name immediately. Daniel Rothwell. Someone asked him, "That system actually works?" Rothwell nodded. "Better than anything else on the market." Another investor said, "Who designed it?" Rothwell took a sip of his drink. "A specialist we work with." Across the room, my father was listening carefully now. Charles Whitmore loved anything that sounded profitable. One of the men pressed again. "You should introduce us sometime." Rothwell shrugged slightly. "She doesn't usually appear in rooms like this." The word she made a few heads turn. I kept looking down at the table. Honestly, I thought the moment might pass. Then Rothwell stood up. His eyes scanned the room once. Then they stopped on me. He frowned slightly, like he was checking a memory. And then he said it. "Elara Whitmore." The room went quiet so fast I could hear a fork drop somewhere behind me. Rothwell stepped closer to my table. "What are you doing sitting back here?" he said. I didn't answer. He turned toward the rest of the ballroom. "You're all discussing the Sentinel system," he said calmly. Then he gestured toward me. "She's the one who built it." And just like that, the balance in the room shifted. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Rothwell was still standing beside my table. Investors started whispering to each other. Chairs shifted. Someone across the room said, "Wait, that Sentinel system." Rothwell nodded once. "Yes." He looked at me again. "You didn't tell them," I almost laughed. "No," I said. "They didn't ask." Across the room, my father stood up slowly. Charles Whitmore hated surprises, especially public ones. "Elara," he said carefully, "perhaps you should come sit with the family." Interesting choice of words. Now I was family again. I stayed where I was. "I'm fine here," I said. My mother stepped forward next. Margaret Whitmore had that polished smile back on her face, but it looked tighter now. "Elara," she said quietly, "this isn't the time. For whatever this performance is." Performance. That word landed harder than she expected. Rothwell glanced between us like he was starting to understand the situation. One of the investors near the center table spoke up. "You designed Sentinel, yes," I said. Another man leaned forward. "The breach prevention model. The one that stopped the Zurich incident. That one." More whispers. The energy in the room shifted again. My father cleared his throat. "Elara has always been technically inclined," he said to the room. I turned toward him. "That's not what you said 8 years ago." The ballroom went quiet again. He didn't respond. My mother stepped closer to me. "We're discussing business partnerships tonight," she said through her smile. "There's no reason to revisit old family disagreements." "No," I said calmly. "There is." Ethan Caldwell was watching now with real interest. I looked at my parents. "You invited me here to marry him." I said, "For capital." My father's jaw tightened. "That's an oversimplification." "Is it?" I turned slightly toward Ethan. "If anyone here still wants that arrangement," I said, "my sister would be perfect." Victoria's face went white. A few people laughed nervously. I pushed my chair back and stood. "Honestly," I said quietly, looking at my parents one last time, "you never even wondered what happened to me after I left." No one tried to stop me as I walked toward the exit. I didn't run out of the ballroom. I just walked, slow, calm. The way you leave a place you already know you're not coming back to. Behind me, I heard voices rising, chairs scraping. Someone calling Rothwell's name. I reached the lobby before anyone followed. Then I heard my father. Elara. I stopped but didn't turn right away. Charles Whitmore rarely used my name like that. Not unless people were watching. You made quite a scene, he said. I turned to face him. You invited the scene. The faint smell of whiskey followed him out of the ballroom. You embarrassed this family tonight. No, I said calmly. You did that 8 years ago. His jaw tightened. This isn't how business works, he said. Reputation matters. So does competence. For a moment he looked like he might argue. Instead, he shifted tactics. You could come back, he said quietly. Whitmore Capital is expanding. With your technology, we could build something serious. I almost smiled. Now you want me? This is business, he replied. Exactly. My mother stepped into the lobby behind him. Elara, Margaret said sharply, that conversation is finished. I looked at both of them. You didn't want a daughter tonight, I said. You wanted leverage? Margaret's smile flickered. Victoria will handle the Caldwell relationship, she said. Good, I replied. A car pulled up outside the entrance. I stepped past them and pushed open the door. Cold night air rushed in. For the first time in years, leaving that family felt easy. About a year later, I stood backstage at a cybersecurity conference in San Francisco. Someone handed me a microphone and said, You're on in 30 seconds. How big is the room? I asked. About 3,000 people. I nodded. That number should have made me nervous. It didn't. A woman from the tech committee leaned toward me. You're the Sentinel architect. Right. That's what people call it. You changed how a lot of companies protect their systems. I just fixed some weak doors. When I stepped onto the stage, the room went quiet. I spent 40 minutes explaining how breaches actually happen. Not through genius hackers. Through small mistakes nobody notices until it's too late. After the talk, a journalist caught up with me near the exit. Ms. Whitmore, he said, flipping open a notebook. Is it true you come from the Whitmore investment family in Boston? Used to... Any regrets leaving them? I thought about the ballroom. My parents watching the room turn. Victoria sitting under the spotlight they built for her. Whitmore Capital lost the Caldwell partnership a few months after that gala, I said calmly. Turns out reputation matters more when investors start asking questions. He scribbled that down quickly. Then he asked, What advice would you give people following your story? I thought about it for a moment. Build something real. I said, not approval, not appearances. Something that still works when nobody's clapping. If you've ever been the person sitting at the wrong table, keep going. Sometimes the room changes, sometimes you do. Either way, don't stop building.